everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another movie review. And today is a double feature. I'm going to be reviewing two of the movies based on Stephen King's first novel, Carrie. Starting, of course, with the original film from 1976, directed by Brian De Palma, Carrie. Of course, I don't have the movie in my collection yet, which I have to say, this is one of those films in the near future I do want to get in my collection, because I hear it has some pretty good features, or at least decent features. But I do have my copy of it. Yeah, this is an omnibus. I've already showed you this, but Carrie. I guess I'm flipping through pages to see. That's the omnibus. That's how much of it is Carrie. It's this latter half right here. Just shows you how small of a book it was. Easy to cut out the unnecessary stuff to just have the movie be the meat of the story. That's why I think the smaller books based on King's work are easier to transition to the big screen. Anyway, in case anyone's wondering, I have read the book, but I haven't read it recently, so I'm not going to really be doing much comparison to how the story is played in the book. But I will tell you, this book does an interesting thing because it cuts between the stuff happening in real time and people writing about the Carrie White case in retrospect. And of course there's even some interesting things afterwards, like there's an inquest about what actually happened the night of the incident and other stuff, and it's interesting, and it ends kind of, I wouldn't call it a downbeat note, but kind of a note where it's like something like this could happen again, but that really wasn't needed. Well, kind of funny that they went that way and this film ended up getting a sequel. Now, apparently De Palma was originally given the book by a writer friend of his who was also friends with Stephen King, or so I hear. He read it and he's like, could make an interesting movie. So he looked, no one had the rights to it, but some people were optioning it, and we all know what happened. It was directed by him, and this wasn't his first film. He had directed a handful of films before this. Murder a la Mode, Greetings, The Wedding Party. I'm going to have trouble with this one. Dionysus in '69. Hi Mom, Get to Know Your Wabbit. Sisters, Phantom of the Paradise, and the film he directed right before this was Obsession. And of course, I don't know, I've never really heard of any of these films, so I don't know how popular or how good they are, but he was an experienced director when he tackled this film, and it shows on how he did certain shots. And of course, after this film, he wanted to do films like Scarface. You want to play her off? Okay, we'll play her off. The Untouchables. You never bring a knife to a gunfight. Raising Cain, Carlito's Way, Mission Impossible, Mission to Mars, The Black Dahlia, and this year he directed a movie called Passion, which I've never heard of. If I have, forgive me, but he's experienced. And the movie was written by Lawrence D. Cohen, which he did an excellent job transitioning the book to the screen with the writing. And the film stars Sissy Spacek, John Travolta, Piper Laurie, Amy Irving, William Catt, that's Cat with a K and two T's, and Nancy Allen, and Betty Buckley. And also P.J. Souls is in there for good measure. Now, the plot of the film is that our main character, title character, Carrie White, she's a shy, friendless girl in her final year of high school, and she lives with her unstable, extremely religious mother named Margaret. And of course, you know, one day she's in the shower at the gym and she has her first period, and this is usually, that would be if that's not embarrassing enough. She doesn't know what's going on, and it freaks her out. She thinks she's dying. And when the other girls see what's going on, they throw tampons and stuff at her, you know, plug it up, plug it up. The gym teacher comes in, breaks it up. And of course they take her to the office and say she can go home, she doesn't have to go to gym. And of course the kids who did this to her are punished. And the whole thing was started by a girl named Chris, played by Nancy Allen. And of course she eventually is not allowed to go to the prom, which, you know, she's going to be like, Carrie, I must get revenge on her even though I am the one that caused this all by starting the tampon throwing. Yeah, that's her logic basically, if you think about it. You know, but you know, the popular girl thing. I'm not getting my way, so I'm just going to go after the girl that caused all this even though it's my own dumbass fault. And then after this I'm going to go star in RoboCop. I just throw that in there. And eventually Carrie is asked to the prom by Tommy Ross, who is, it's hard to tell if he's very popular. He's, at least, people like him at least. And he is dating one of the girls that also threw the tampons at her, named Sue, and he asks Carrie to the prom on Sue's request, to kind of make up for it. And they go, and that's basically where Chris has a revenge, which I don't think it's a secret what the revenge is, so I don't really feel any obligation not to mention it. And that, of course, is, the whole pig's blood thing on her. If anyone's seen Scream, they already probably know what it is. And, of course, from there, it's basically, as they put it on Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments, Carrie lets the bitches have it. And that's all I'm really going to talk about the plot with that and this one. Now, this is a film that a lot of people love, and with good reason. It is a well-paced film, well-shot film, well-acted film. Magnificent score by Pino Donaggio. And it has a 7.4 on IMDb, and on Rotten Tomatoes it has 72% with the audience and a 92% with the critics. It's one of the highest scores I've seen. This is the consensus. Carrie is a horrifying look at supernatural powers, high school cruelty, and teen angst, which I agree with that. And it brings us one of the most memorable and disturbing prom scenes in history. Very true. And I have to say, because at the time of recording this, I've already seen the remake, and that's going to be the second half of this video. I could say that one of the reasons it's very powerful, at least not only because of how De Palma shot it, but with how he shot it and how they executed all the stuff, it's very subtle in how it does stuff. It's very subtle in how Carrie discovers her powers, and also very subtle of how she lets the bitches have it. And other stuff, and add to it the score that kind of sounds like it kind of sounds like it takes some influence from Psycho, the nee, but in a good way. And also the acting performances from all the actors and actresses sells it home. Now, Sissy Spacek, from what I hear, she campaigned to get the role of Carrie, and I'm glad she did, because she really does fit the character. Though in the novel, Carrie is described as, sort of attractive, slightly overweight. In this movie, she's not. She's not, classically beautiful, but Spacek is beautiful in her own way. I wouldn't say, I don't know if homely would be the right word, or if that'd be an insult, but she's like a hometown girl. But because of the fact she's shy, a little socially awkward, and has that religious extremist mother, she doesn't have any friends, and keeps away because she doesn't want to, risk her mother's wrath. And Sissy did a good job at that. And throughout the whole film, you can see how good she is and how, I guess I don't know if she related to this character or not, but she did a very good job in it, and it earned her, I believe, an Oscar nod, because I don't think she won it. Don't think she won until Coal Miner's Daughter, but I believe she was nominated, at least, which I have to say, deservedly so. And I'm actually glad, yeah, she was nominated, yeah. And I'm glad that she was eventually won, because you know how there's a lot of good actors and actresses that go their whole careers without even being nominated, and there are some that get nominated multiple times and never win. I'm glad at least with Spacek, she at least got nominated once. And of course, later films, she was in Marie, Crimes of the Heart, JFK, Songs in Ordinary Times, film I mostly know her from, Tuck Everlasting, and kind of funny, another film. She goes from playing a daughter in a film based on a book to playing a mother in a film based on a book. Hot Rod, Big Love, she was on, Deadfall. I just hate having to crack in there. She did a very... Don't know how much more I can praise her performance as Carrie. This is basically how I kind of envision the character in the book. Piper Laurie as Margaret was also kind of how I envisioned her sort of like this, but not as much as this. And Laurie's actually still with us, apparently. She's 81 years old now. From what I understand, this film helped jumpstart her career because she hadn't been in much in a while, and deservedly so. I mean, she was great in this film, and funny thing, the film she was in before this she got an Oscar nod for, and in this film she gets an Oscar nod for. Kind of funny if you think about it. I don't think she ever won, but at least she got nominated, that's all I can say. And as Piper Laurie as Margaret, boy, I mean, the few scenes we see her in front of normal people, she's normal. You can tell there's something weird about her, the way she talks and the way she acts about the Lord. But the moment she's behind closed doors with Carrie, right in the face, and then how her vocal inflections, And, I could see your dirty pillows. Eve was weak, Eve was weak, all that. I wouldn't say it's over the top. Maybe by today's acting styles, maybe a little bit, but one, she's a stage actress from what I hear originally, or was at least trained from that perspective, which is the same perspective I was trained from, which is more using your voice than, using your face stuff, because that's more for, like, film acting. Because obviously not everyone, when you're performing on stage, not everyone's going to be able to see your face. Only maybe the people in the front row, so you have to emote with your voice. And you could tell that in her voice that she, at least for this character, she went with that route, and it fits, because it just shows how crazy and insane this character is, and it really does fit, and it really makes you want to hate her, and of course it makes the scene in the prom with the blood all the more memorable when it's repeating what she mentioned earlier. They're all going to laugh at you, how she said it. It makes that scene all the more memorable. Amy Irving as Sue. She did a very great job. And you believe that she is sorry about what happened. She is sympathetic, and that if things had been different, you can imagine her with Carrie, or maybe not before this, but after this. Of course, she had a career after this, and ironically, she was. I wouldn't say this is ironically. It's kind of funny because she was married to Steven Spielberg for a little bit, and they had one child together. I did not know that. Or maybe I did, I just didn't notice her. She was in a couple films before this, and of course she went on to have a career after this. I'm looking to see. She was the singing voice of Jessica Rabbit in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. She was Miss Kitty in American Tail, Five Goes West. She reprised her role in The Rage Carrie 2, which I haven't seen. She was in a movie called Bossa Nova. Chevy Nova? Kind of fun. Here's another funny thing. She's with her co-star again in Tuck Everlasting. It's kind of funny. I did not know that until just now. And more recently, her career has shortened. She's only been in a couple movies. Like, she was in 0 Hour. She was in an episode of House. She was in some Broadway stuff, so I guess she was a stage-trained actress as well. She was good in this role, and I actually I wouldn't say, don't know if sympathize would be the correct word, but kind of saw from her point of view. William Catt played Tommy Ross, and I thought he was kind of likable, but you could tell his hairstyle is totally of the 70s. Funny that I described that with the word totally. And I really did believe that he was being genuine with taking Carrie to the prom, and you could tell he was starting to like her. Maybe not, it's hard to tell if he was, like, sexually attracted to her, especially should make it a little more awkward for him since he's in a relationship. He's only doing this as a favor. But you could tell that maybe after this, if things had been different, like Sue, he would have been friends with her, buddied around, maybe if they had gone to college. Well, funny thing is, apparently he auditioned for the role of Luke Skywalker. Would have been a little weird if he had gotten it and then had gotten it. Don't you think? It'd been like Luke and Carrie went to the prom. And of course, he's been in other stuff. He was in an episode of House. It doesn't have it listed, so I'm just scanning the page. Ironically, he was also in the cult film House. Two things called House. Alien vs. Hunter, The Man from Earth, Gamers. Oh, he's had a career too. Also has some Perry Mason movies. And of course, John Travolta played Billy Nolan in this movie, which I have to say, he does an okay job, but I'm guessing this is very early in his career, which I'm going to how early, because I've never really looked up his whole filmography before. Okay, this is the film he got right before Saturday Night Fever, so this was only his 4th movie. So I don't know if it was just because his character's minor and he didn't do as best as he could, or maybe it's because his character really does nothing or something, but let's just say we've seen better from him, but it's interesting to see an early acting performance and see where his talent went. It's also kind of funny to hear him speaking with a weird accent, man, and all that. And also how wrapped around his girlfriend's finger he is. It's like, oh, look what is happening. It's also kind of funny that he goes from speaking like a southern guy, speaking like, man, don't lie, to speaking, if you were a little spell, I can't do Turl. Turl, you guys know I'm referencing Battlefield Earth with that. I can't do Turl's voice, at least not at this hour. And of course, ironically, he's an Oscar-nominated actor too. I don't know if he ever won it. I know he's nominated a couple times, but I like him as an actor though. I think his career had ups and downs, but a lot of careers usually have that. It's interesting to see where his beginning was. Nancy Allen as Chris, perfect casting. She brought the right amount of bitchiness to this role, and throughout the whole movie, you just want to see her get her comeuppance. And of course, you like stuff like when she gets slapped by the gym teacher. You're like, yeah, go, you deserve that. And then what happens to her in the end? Yeah, you deserve that. This is all your fault. So, technically speaking, if you think about it, everything that happens at the very end of the movie is all this character's fault. Think about it. Granted, Carrie does some of it, but if you think about it, the whole causing point is her. So basically, she deserves what happened. Nancy Allen did an excellent job, and it's the mark of a good actress and an actor if they can make you care about the character, and also if they can make you hate the character for the right reasons, like, not if you don't like the actor's performance, like, oh my god, they're not doing it right, but if you can hate them for the right reason. According to this, apparently Nancy Allen was also married to De Palma after this, so kind of funny. She married the director. They only hit because she's humping director. You know I had to do that. This is her third film, so she went on to do more as well, obviously. Other than, of course, the RoboCop film, she was in Poltergeist 3, Against the Law, Secret of the Andes, and I knew her from an episode of Law & Order SVU, but I think that's according to this, that's the last TV thing she did, which is kind of sad. She should be doing more stuff. I don't know if she's concentrating on home life or she can't find any other stuff, but she should do more work too. PJ Soles, of Halloween fame, good to see her there as one of Chris's friends, Norma. Nice to see her. And then other actors and actresses, that's all I'm going to go into them. Except maybe Betty Buckley as the gym teacher. She did a good job. You liked her. You could tell that maybe at first she didn't really like Carrie, but later in the film you could tell she kind of, sees beneath the surface, like, oh, so this is the girl that was under there the whole time. She should have come out more. At least now she's coming out and all that, and it's like, she's nice. And I liked her the whole time, especially with what she did to the girls that did all that crap at the beginning of the movie. I have to say that punishment really did fit the crime. The stuff she was in, this was apparently the first movie she was in. I'm guessing she just mostly did like theater stuff. And she did a pretty good job, as you can tell. Other films she was in the 94 film Wyatt Earp. She played Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Jones. Couldn't resist. In The Happening. Don't. You have a thing. It's like, Marky Mark, you have a thing going on with Mrs. Jones? What? No! Couldn't resist. TV work. Cagney and Lacey, which is an 87 show, I'm guessing. Bonnie and Clyde, The True Story. Some episodes of Oz. Episodes of SVU. Wait a minute. I'm trying to remember that character because I haven't watched the show religiously. She played Martha Jefferson she was a replacement actress for Martha Jefferson in 1776 when it was on Broadway. Same thing with Pippin, which is ironically the play that my school is doing as I record this, so it's kind of funny. They do 1776, I'll audition for it, but anyway, on the whole, this is a very entertaining horror film. Great direction by De Palma, great use of the camera work, really does fit, and you got great performances out of the actors. Cohen did a magnificent screenplay. It translated this book to the screen well. The score was great. Everything about the film is great. I don't really have any problems with this film. It's actually well paced as well. I mean, like I said, it's been a while since I read the book, so I can't really remember everything. I just remember certain things, obviously, because it's a written out word and all the stuff is written. Obviously, some of the stuff is going to be longer than it is on film, but it was paced pretty well. And I'll save that for the latter half of the next part of the review, but it was just paced perfectly. My rating for Carrie, say 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's a film I definitely recommend. And now on to the remake. Should I say second remake? And okay guys, it's now time for the second half of this video where I'm reviewing the 2013 remake of Carrie. directed by Kimberly Pierce and starring Chloe Grace Moritz as our title character. You will know her name. Oh, no. Now, first of all, even though I've only seen the original film twice, that's right, I've only seen it twice, I can automatically tell you it's not a film that needed to be remade. Out of all the Stephen King live-action films, the only one that I say could probably use a remake would be The Shining, and that's also because of the fact that that's a loose adaptation. Granted, we already got one remake, but you guys already know my feelings on the miniseries, but that's probably the only one. Because all the other ones, you don't really need to do it, but maybe It as a miniseries on HBO to actually, if you want to do, but it's not one that's, like, we got to do it. No. But other than that, I can't think of any because the other one's already good enough. But now, since we're getting another remake of Carrie, I looked at the trailers and I'm like, it looks interesting, and I actually did like the music they used in the trailers, which interesting for tribute making. Now, of course, went to see the film with my buddies Jeff and LJ. In case you're wondering, that does actually stand for what you think it stands for, Little John. Now, we saw the film and afterwards we talked about it, and we all basically reached the same consensus that the film, it's not a bad remake, but it's not like an epic great remake. It's in the middle. It's okay. Now, what I mean by that is usually remakes, they usually fall into one of three categories. Either the movie sucks monkeys, it is as good or better than the original, or it's okay. The hate one usually is films like Nightmare on Elm Street's remake, or as Matt calls it, Nightmare on Rape Street. If you view The Thing as a pre-make, you could put that there. The better ones, The Thing, The Blob, The Fly, and depending on who you ask, the Friday the 13th reboot / remake could either be in that one or in the middle one, depending on which film you're comparing it to, I guess. This film, I think, goes in the middle, because it's not better than the original film, but I wouldn't say it's bad enough to warrant putting, in the hate pile. Now, I'd say probably the biggest reason that it's in the okay thing is it just basically doesn't do things as well as the original film. I know I don't like to try to compare it that much, but it's kind of hard not to, especially after watching the original film the night before. Just some of the things weren't done as well. I liked how they did some things, but film, I'll say if it's worth one watch. Would I get it in my collection? If I hear there's like good enough features, like if Chloe does a commentary over it, I'd say it's probably worth getting. Or at least renting, but then again the rental copy will not have that. But I don't think Chloe would do a commentary. I'll say Chloe is one of the best things about this film, though. I'll get to that in a little bit. The film has a 6.6 on IMDb, which I think a little bit too high. I think it should at least be a 5.5 at most. It'll probably go down in a little bit. It has a 65% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I don't know if that will balance out or not, but it has a 51 with the critics, which kind of figured it'd be that low after watching it, but could be a couple points higher, like at least a 53 or 54. And this is the consensus. It boasts a talented cast, but Kimberly Pierce's reimagining of De Palma's horror classic finds little new in the Stephen King novel and feels woefully unnecessary, and that is true. It doesn't really find anything new in it. Now, the screenplay was by Roberto, and I'm going to have trouble with this last name, so I'm not even going to try. It's Ace. It's two parts, it's one of those hyphenated last names. So I'm guessing, just based on the fact the guy's name's Roberto, I know, before anyone says this is not racist, this is based on one thing I learned in Spanish class. I'm guessing his naming convention is going with the Mexican way. Combining your mother's maiden name and your dad's last name to make a name. That's just my guess. Or you just wanted to make a political statement. Anyway, it's like Aguirre Sarcasa. I don't know. And also Lawrence Cohen, who wrote the original screenplay for the first film, is also credited. So I'm guessing that they did take some inspiration from the original film's screenplay. Why? I don't know. Because I could tell you, if I was the one who directed and was part of the writing process, I would have directed them back to the novel to start fresh. Because that's what they need to do. It'd be like if they did a remake of Kubrick's film The Shining. Would you really want to look at his screenplay for it? No. Maybe just look at it to see how he pace certain things, but that's about it. You go back to the novel and then decide what's necessary, what's unnecessary. That's basically it. That's basically what they did with the first Carrie film, so maybe that's why they did it. And that's why it just basically feels like watching the same film just done by different people and with a different director and all that, while at the same time not. What I mean by that is that if you watch the films back to back, you notice similarities but a lot of differences. And I chalked it up to the different actors, the different director, also the different time period, because it's been almost 40 years. And also the fact that they probably also did take some more stuff from the novel. Like, I noticed one thing which I will address. Now, Pierce, she's not, when she tackled this film, she wasn't as experienced as De Palma was, so that's one thing. So I think she just did this, directing-wise, was okay job. Now, she's only directed 2 other films, Boys Don't Cry, which I heard won an Oscar for acting, which I've never really heard of it, but it sounds like an interesting film, so I'll look it up one day. And Stop Loss, which I've never heard of. So why would they get her? I think they mostly got her for Boys Don't Cry because, you know, story-wise, I could see probably why they would do that, you know, from the character point of view. But they should have got a director who was more experienced with directing, especially this genre. Now, I want to know what people would think of this. Now, imagine if they had gotten John Carpenter to direct this film. When Carrie lets the bitches have it, you know she'd let the bitches have it. Now, music was done by Marco Beltrami, and it's not as memorable as the first one either. I know I'm going to be saying that a couple more times in this, but it's just true. The music was okay. The non-score music they used, though, I think fits the scenes, even though some of them were like, swaggets. Now, the story is basically the same as in the first film, since I've already said that in this video. I'm not going to repeat it, but it's basically the same synopsis overall, so I'm just basically going to bring up the differences when I address the actors. Chloe Grace Moretz as Carrie White is probably one of the best things in this film, because she does, even though she's playing the same character Sissy Spacek played in the first film, and you could tell without the character's written and stuff that it's the same character. With how the story is set differently in the character and how she acts, it's different. I know they mentioned this with a remake, Shakespeare and all that, and I know it's weird to compare when talking about a remake, but I have to bring it up. It's kind of like when you watch 2 different productions based on a Shakespeare play, or even 2 different movies based on Shakespeare. Like, for example, when you compare the Mel Gibson film of Hamlet with the Kenneth Branagh version of Hamlet, you see similarities since they're based on the same source material, but you notice a lot of differences. Granted, I haven't watched the Mel Gibson one all the way through, but I did notice a lot of differences. It's kind of like that, but not as grand, because there's a lot more differences between those films than there are between the 2 Carrie films. But with her acting, one of the few differences is the acting performances of our leads. Here you can tell she's like the original Carrie. She's socially awkward, kind of, under the wing of her abusive mother. Though I will say this Carrie at least, mouths off a little bit. You can tell she's still a little independent, but of course, as we see, it costs her a little bit. And when she finally discovers her powers, it's not as subtle, but I don't know. I think it might just be me, and maybe I have to watch the film again. I think I'm going to chalk that up to the fact that we now CGI technology and all that. Which, how they did all the stuff, like one scene where she's sitting in a bed and lifting it with her powers and with the books, I didn't mind that, because it's showing how much more powerful she is, and that's a little bit more in line with how she is in the book, though I don't remember if she trained like that. Like I mentioned earlier, I haven't read the book in a while. But it was a nice little training scene. And Chloe is Carrie, just with how she did in this movie. I can honestly say in the near future, I don't know, maybe in another 10 years, I can honestly see Chloe at least getting an Oscar nod for a movie. Whether she'll win or not, that depends on how good her performance is, but I can at least see her getting nominated one day. I know she's only 16, but she's a good actress. If I were to do a list of my favorite actresses in Hollywood right now, she'd probably be on it. Even though I haven't seen everything she's done, but I want to check out some of her other work. And of course, when she was first cast, I know some people were a little apprehensive. I mean, look at her. She's beautiful. Why would she be picked on? Which I could guess. That's actually one thing that crossed my mind, but then I thought of the solution right away. Well, even if she is beautiful, the fact that she's socially awkward, doesn't talk to anybody, and has a mother everyone knows has a religious craze, That could be part of the reason why, and also if you also factor in the fact that some of the popular girls might be jealous of her because of her beauty, which I have to say, Chloe actually looks better. At least I thought she looked more beautiful than some of the girls they got to play the popular girls. You factor that in, you can see probably why they'd make fun of her. Or maybe that's just me thinking on it. And also, beautiful girls can get picked on for reasons like that, but maybe that's just me. Now, I'm checking to see what else Chloe's been in besides this. I know, the 2 Kick-Ass movies, and then that one movie, Hick. I didn't know she was in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, 500 Days of Summer. Yeah, I knew she was in the Amityville Horror remake, kind of funny, another remake. And I did like her in Dark Shadows, even though one of the things with her character does kind of come out of nowhere. And she has some other movies being done, but she's one of the best things about this movie. I already said the best thing about this movie. And the thing with her, with her powers, sorry if I'm a bit out of it, a little work today, so less subtle. That's basically how it is with her using her powers. Especially in the prom scene, though, there's one thing I did like about that. It's the fact that they all notice what she's doing. It's like, oh fuck. So it adds a little bit of pandemonium to the following scene even more so. Julianne Moore, I like her as an actress. She was in Hannibal, she was in the Psycho remake, she was in Lost World Jurassic Park, among other films. Oh, I like her. And I can say she was cast as a good choice to play Margaret White. She's not better than Piper Laurie, though, but I thought she was an interesting choice. I don't know if it's just me, but I noticed a more mother-daughter relationship between Moore and Moritz in this film than I did between Piper Laurie and Sissy Spacek in the first film. Maybe it's just me. These seem more believable as mother and daughter. Maybe it's because Margaret White actually seems to love Carrie genuinely, with a genuine love in this one, whereas in the first one it's hard to tell if it's genuine love or she just feels like she likes to control her as her congregation. And also how she plays the crazy side, it's a little bit it's kind of a little bit up, kind of like how Laurie is, but the vocal inflection isn't nearly as well. I think maybe it's because Moore isn't a stage-trained actor or something. But I think kind of how she does some other stuff a little subtly works, but there are moments where, as Jeff put it when we were watching the movie, she could have learned creepy lessons from Hannibal Lecter. Kind of funny since she was in Hannibal, but I could say yeah, a little bit, but she wasn't a bad choice, and I thought she pulled off the birthing scene at the beginning pretty well, and the rest of the movie pretty well, and kind of funny what knife she chooses for the ending, considering she was in the Psycho remake. But on the whole, I thought she just was okay after everything. Judy Greer as the gym teacher, thought she was an okay one. Don't really recognize her from any movies except for the trailer for 17 Dresses or something. Then the rest of the actors and actresses I've checked, I only recognize a few of them. Like, I know one of them is from Chronicle. I'm not going to look up specifically which one because I don't want to make this video longer than it's already going to be. But I didn't think he did. I think it was the guy that played Billy Nolan, I think, who was in Chronicle. I just said I don't want to do it, but I'm double checking just to make sure. Yeah, that was him. He was also in The Host, so I guess that kind of balances out. And he's Australian too. And I think only the one that played Tommy Ross is the only one that's a teenager other than Chloe. All the ones that played Tommy Ross, Chris, Sue, and Billy, they did okay. Not as good or memorable as the actors in the original film, but they weren't wooden. They were just there. And looking at their filmographies earlier, they've only made a couple films. I can see why. The guy that I mentioned already, I thought he did a better job in Chronicle than here, but then again, that's an original film technically, so more freedom, whereas here, kind of restricted. And nothing that makes this film not as good as the original film is the fact the original film, with how they do certain things, granted with the clothes stuff, you can tell it's made in the 70s and all that, but kind of has a timeless feel, whereas this one, with how they do the dancing and certain music, it's kind of, set in stone, and it's a modern film, even more so when we see the tombstone at the end. It's like, oh, with how they're dancing, how far have we fallen in 40 years? Just imagine how it's worse it's going to be in another 40 when they remake this film again. That's actually based on a conversation between me and LJ. And one thing I did like is I liked how they updated the opening sequence where Carrie gets her period. I liked one of the changes they did there, where one of the characters records it with the iPhone and then uploads it. Though, as Jeff mentioned when we found that out, wouldn't that technically be sexual harassment? And of course, because of that, Sue gets in trouble. She has to bring her big daddy lawyer in, which I think dropping the gym teacher slapping her, I think was a mistake, because that would have added more context to her bringing the lawyer in. And of course, not wanting to show the phone, so she gets out of prom. But that was interesting, and that just reminded me. Because of the fact Chloe's only 16, it made me wonder, this is more so when I was actually watching the first film again, how they were going to shoot the shower scene. Because in the shower scene, we see nudity. We see breasts, we see a brief lower thing, not in clarity because of towel and all that, but we do see it. So, of course, when we see Carrie, we don't see anything. We just see outlines and all that in the original. So I was wondering how they're going to shoot this. And it's more or less what I thought they were going to do. You only see them in the bras, panties, and then, you know, when they're actually naked, it's shot tastefully and with discretion, which kind of fits. If Chloe was 17 in certain states, I don't think they wouldn't give a shit, but 16, so it doesn't matter. So 16 doesn't matter. 16, so they had to go with discretion. Especially, I actually thought the other actresses were younger, but I guess maybe the majority were younger. Just the main ones weren't. The main ones are in their like early 20s. And just the minor cast, they just did okay. It's not like the other one where you believed it. I do like that some of the stuff is the same, like the teacher's still an asshole, but instead of going, beautiful, he's like, okay, Carrie, thanks for sharing. That was morbid. It's like, and I want to slap you. And of course, switching it around, Carrie reading instead of Billy, a little interesting thing. It's just a lot of stuff. I could go talk about this for hours. It's just, you know, stuff like Billy doesn't seem as... you know, Tommy Ross doesn't seem as genuine as he does in the original one. I don't know if that's the acting or the writing, but Chris, she's still a bitch, but here she's more of a daddy's one and more of a follower because her boyfriend, Billy Nolan, is the one that decides to do the blood thing. And as Jeff pointed out when we were talking after the film, he's dressed like a Guido. At least that's what he thought of. To me, he just looked like a James Dean wannabe guy. And Sue, she still is genuine, but I don't know if it's the writing, the fact the actress isn't that experienced, or both. I don't even know if she's a trained actress or not, but didn't come off as a genuine. But though I do think she did sell one of the things they added into the film, at least believably, and that is the fact that there's a subplot in the novel where the character thinks she's pregnant. And at the end, we find out she is, but then Carrie gets rid of it. I'm glad they changed that part, though. I think it makes the film a little bit more upbeat that Carrie doesn't do away with it. Of course, she did it as a favor in the book, but I think that adds to it. And I know I'm going back to the character Carrie here. One thing I like about this film is that she's a little bit more assertive against her mother, you know, rising up against her mother when she finds out about her powers. You know, like actually locking her mother in the closet. It's like, how do you like it? How do you like it, Margaret? Not so fun when you're inside the closet now, is it? So I like that. And then, of course, there's actually one moment where Carrie's using her powers where all three of us are thinking, you have failed me for the last time, Admiral. Where are those transmissions you intercepted? What have you done with those plans? Because she actually does do the Vader thing. I thought that was interesting. I wonder if she did that intentionally or if the director told her to do it. Is one thing I was thinking. It's just only little bits and stuff like that that at least made the experience enjoyable. But probably another big thing is the fact this film, even though it's, from what I understand, it's a couple minutes longer than the original, it just seems paced differently. It's almost like the film was rushing to get to the prom. It's like, I gotta get to the prom, I gotta get to the Carrie scene. And it's not just that in the movie, that was like how it was in the advertising too, so I don't know if it's just, I want to find out if I'm the only one that thinks that, but despite all that, it's at least worth one watch. I'm glad I watched it. And it was a weird double feature too, because we saw at the same time we saw Escape Plan. I know that's probably a weird double feature. You watch Chloe get covered in blood, and then you watch Arnold and Sly go blow crap up. Anyway, my rating for the film, 3.5 out of 5. Mostly for the stuff I liked. It's one of those ones that definitely could have needed a lot of work, needed the writing to be tweaked a lot more to differentiate it from the original film, needed a more experienced director, and needed a few more experienced actors. But other than that, it was worth one watch at least. I don't know whether my feelings for it whether I'll hate the film, or maybe I'll appreciate it a little bit more upon subsequent watches. More likely my thoughts will probably just stay the same, but who knows. Definitely probably won't make my best list, and it definitely won't make my worst list.